Okay, we've got to the stage where I'd like to replace this rear crank seal. You can see it's got oil on it, and there's a couple of little things we need to look at. I'll put out a couple of shorts, but we'll do a long version of the video for this. I may have to stop and start. There's fires in the area and the helicopters come over my place to get to the river. So it may be a bit disjointed, but I'll try and tack it together. But look, what you need to do with this, and I put out a little short about it, is I like to measure from the top of the surface here down to the top of the seal there. Now, why do I do that? It tells you where the seal is in this instance. There is a distinct mark on the crankshaft here where the boss of the flywheel sits over to locate it, and that's about 5 millimetres deep. But you don't want it coming back too far. Well, you need to know where it is to start with. Now, there's a lip inside here that the seal goes down onto the lip, but because these tractors, well, this one's 1958, so work out how old that is yourself, and we don't know whether it's had clean oil all its life. We don't know anything, so we need to, if the crank has a worn groove in the crank for the new seal, and we know, in my instance, my seal is 4.75 millimetres from this edge here to the top of the seal there. If there's quite a worn lip on the crank and you think, oh, that's not real good, we can polish up the crank with a bit of paper, and we would probably have 1 or 2 millimetres. We could bring this seal back this way so that the new seal is on a new surface on the crankshaft. Now, my mate Peter messaged me the other day on one of the videos, and he said now's a good time to actually check the crank end play, for the oil clearance. Now, this housing behind here, there's a split here, this housing behind here, that supports the rear main crankshaft bearing. And by putting a dial gauge on here and flexing, you can see how much wear is in that rear main bearing and see if it needs replacing. I might do that after I get this bit out. Well, we'll just see. My main thing on this was just, I don't want to rebuild the whole thing. I know it's had new pistons, rings, liners and all that in it, but how far they went, I don't know. So I'm just going to take a 1/2 inch socket on my nut gun. We'll loosen all these fellas out. I'll drop them on the back of the flywheel. These bolts hold the whole lot in, so I'd like to split it at the back here. There's a gasket between these housings and the block and that. And there's the seal housing. This seal hasn't got a lip at all for the seal to go in. And the bloke mentioned that it had it this morning, and I thought, oh shit, I could remember that, but yeah, okay. But you can see the seal here. You can see I don't know if you can see that or not, but there's cracks there. That seal is hard as old boots. And we can actually break a piece out if we choose to. So you can hear it crackling as it breaks. That's how hard it is. So it's a good job we're in here doing this. What's the crank look like? Look, there's a slight lip there. A little mark there. But look, that'll polish up nicely. And by putting the bolts in, here and locking this up, we can actually test crank end play. We can check oil clearance up and down, things like that. I'm not going to do that. I just don't want to know in case it's buggered. So what we'll do now, we'll take this housing over to the press. We'll press this seal out and yeah, go from there. Yeah, that's an old tie-dye fella, all right. probably original from 1958. I know when they rebuilt it, they probably didn't pull the crank out. Well, I'm pretty well sure they didn't. So there you go. We'll go over to the press, eh? Okay, I've got my seal housing, seal retainer over on the bench here, and in this light you can probably see better the cracked seal and why it was leaking. But I was mentioning before it had a lip for the seal to go in, to hold the seal against, and look, that is under here. I think I might have mentioned it was under here, but it's up here, so I've probably buggered that up. But something interesting on this one, when I was saying about measuring from here down to the seal, when you push the seal in here, you would imagine you would push it right to the housing, right to this lip as far as you could go in. But look, on mine, I have 43 thousandths of an inch gap between there. Now, I'm not sure why that is, but that's all the way around there. And look, the crankshaft is fine. I'm very pleased with how the crankshaft is. Now, if I start my verniers here, my trusty verniers, okay. Oh, then we got battery trouble coming up. But if I measure from there to the lip that's worn about there, we've got 10.2 mil. And when we look at this one, this lip is about, 2 to 3 millimeters further back. So it doesn't matter if we just press this seal right to that shoulder here, we're going to have a new place on the crank for the seal to go to. So I'll just pop this seal out, have a look at the housing. And that's the seal, that's the old one. Now this housing here, you can actually see the rubbish that's got in between the seal and the shoulder there. So what we need to do here is a bit of CRC brake cleaner, brake clean. It's good stuff. So we're just going to try and give that a nice wipe in here and clean all that out. Yeah, old girl, what? I think it's August, maybe August 1958, I'm just not sure. And this old seal's probably all of that age. There's the paper gasket. It's only a thin gasket. I think the aftermarket gasket I'll be fitting feels a little bit thicker than that. And a plane going over the top. They're doing firefighting around our area, so we're going to have a little bit of noise. Okay, now I've tidied the housing up, cleaned the gasket surface and things like that. I have a seal. Now this is a Perkins seal fitting tool for the crankshaft. It's not the right tool for this job. It's Litchfield number PD145/1 and EP145/1, but it turns out to be the right size to press this seal on. So that'll work well. So what I will do, I'll pop a little bit of oil in here. We'll set the seal up in there like that. And we'll go over to the press. We're going to press this in, and I'll have to line this tool up perfectly and just press it down straight. Well, I put that seal over on the press and tried to get the tool, but it's got a slight curve here, and well, I chased it and chased it around the mulberry bush, and I ended up with a flat disc. I had a bigger one over there, but a flat disc, and just starting it and bringing it round, and then once I got it started and sitting in there properly, well, then I could continue on. I've also taken it down until there's no gap there, so this seal surface on the crank, it'll be back, look, I reckon maybe 3mm, something like that. So the crank looks good. Where this hard old seal run, there is a slight mark on it, but we're not going to worry too much. Now I have a paper gasket out of an old kit I was going to try and use up. Okay, I went and got this gasket. The other one was a bit of rubbish. Now the holes are offset here. They can only go in one way, and that's to do with the rear main bearing at the back and all that, so we don't need to worry too much about all that. You won't be able to fit it without it. So over the back here, I have a little bit of Permatex. There's a real old can of it, and it gets real tacky, and yeah, she bloody goes good, I think. Yeah, anyway, I like to put a little bit on this. No silicone, chuck your silicone to the shit house. We don't need silicone. Okay, that'll do that just for the moment. Now if we flip this over here, oh look at that, I even got the holes right. Woohoo! Today's my lucky day. Put a bit more Permatex. I used to work with a bloke and he used to call this Spermatex. Funny little bugger. Just saying. If it looks like this, you're in trouble. Seek help. Yeah, quite tacky. This stuff gets quite runny, but this old one, there ain't no oil leaking past that. Gives me an indication of what the front crank seal will be though, eh? So that might be another job. That'll bloody seal. Now also what I'd like to do is pop a bit of grease on that seal lip. Doesn't need to be a lot, just says me, splattering it everywhere. And that's just when we slide it on the crank, it's going to slide easy, not gall, nothing like that. Alright, I'll turn off, we'll head over to the tractor and we'll bolt it back on. Okay, I've got the seal over here with the grease on it, and I like to pull it up from under the bottom and just work it on gently, making sure you don't drop that garter spring in behind there. But look, it'll go on quite easy. And then that'll line up there like that. It only goes one way, like I mentioned earlier. And that looks like it's lined up. Well, this one, yeah, we got two lined up. We can't be far off the money, Lance. Okay, I've finally got my bolts lined up, and my numbers, the 59506 and the other number is here, so it's crossways. I should have taken note of that, and look, really you could centre pop that and have it done like that, but I didn't think to do that, and yeah, I just spent bloody 20 minutes trying to line that bloody thing up. There's also a timing mark up here, that a little arrow. We might talk about that a little bit later, but for the moment here with this thing, I'm just going to run these up gently. Now there is a torque for this. The about 25 foot-pounds, something like that. I haven't got the torque with me. I'm not going to use a torque wrench. I'm just going to do them up. So I'll get a spanner on that, but look, just for the moment, that's the job. Yeah, so measure your seal depth in case you have to change it. Why this one was 43 thou below this lip, I have no idea, but if I didn't measure it, you know, it was worth measuring. I think you should centre pop here and here, because I chased around. It seemed everywhere I put it was wrong, but I finally got my act together, and I'll clean this surface here up. And I'll have to go and find all the torques, because coming up I'll pop a new pilot bearing in the flywheel and I'll pop that on. But look, that might be the end of this video. I'm just doing the rear seal. Nothing to it really. Mine was cooked. It certainly needed to be done. I'll clean this housing, clean all this oil up. So when I run it up again, if there's an oil, if there's a problem with oil, engine oil from this end, I'll certainly know where it came from. And yeah, we can go from there, but I think I've fixed it.